All right, let's get some insight now from Hakan Camuz, who is the head of international law at Stoke White, a law firm that investigates war crimes, and he joins us now live from London. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on the program. I want to start off by asking you what you make of this New York Times report and the inconsistencies in what the U.S. government has said compared to private investigations conducted on the casualties resulting from the U.S. air war against Daesh.
So this small but very effective military unit that they have created, that has organized and facilitated the strikes that cost the lives of many civilians in Syria, and this news about them coming out now with a report from New York Times, it's an amazing piece of news that actually shows us the kind of immunity these people think they actually enjoy. If you read the article, it actually talks about how political leaders have actually allowed the military leaders to make these kind of decisions, and then even the generals have allowed the junior officers to make such decisions about strikes that cost lives of many civilians in Syria and Iraq. And so Americans basically thinking that they have a right to make these strikes. They think they're fighting the ISIS and justifying it as if they're fighting a terrorist organization, as they are. But at the same time, killing civilians is something they seem to be easily accepting and justifying it by saying it was a successful fight against a terror organization. But at the same time, knowing great details how many thousands of civilians they've killed along the way. It's unacceptable. And unfortunately, there is no international platform where we can actually fight to seek justice for the victims of these civilians, because American courts do not address this issue, nor are there effective international legal body where we can actually take these cases.
This hasn't just happened in Syria and Iraq. The Pentagon recently said that none of its personnel will be held responsible for a deadly drone strike that happened back in August on a family car in Kabul. I mean, 10 people died in that strike, 7 of them being children. Why aren't they holding anyone accountable for an incident they initially described being the outcome of execution errors and a tragic mistake?
This is a decline of rule of law. And as humanity needs to look at this carefully. We have a serious problem. And the problem we have is this is just going to get worse. It's not going to get any better because the value of upholding the rule of law has diminished, and it's diminishing more. International Criminal Court prosecutor, newly appointed, Karim Khan, excludes American war crimes in Afghanistan and wants to focus on Taliban's war crimes, and he should. But he should, at the same time, investigate the American military's war crimes in Afghanistan too. So if the prosecutor of ICC actually makes such decisions, why do you think American government actually present their soldiers at the justice platforms where we can actually face them and hold them accountable for their actions? The problem here is they have the feeling of immunity, that nothing's going to happen. And that's how they actually, in such a brazen attitude, set up units like this and just order strike on civilians without any care. They're supposed to have protocols in place for the actions like this to happen, but they ignore them completely, or they circumvent reading some of the rules of law that exist. They circumvent it by, for example, turning the camera of the drone or somehow creating a report that they had some kind of intelligence that collected from their local partners on the ground, and they justify killing civilians like this.
Well, you lead a law firm that investigates war crimes. From a legal perspective, how would you evaluate U.S. strikes conducted for counterterrorism purposes?
They must have a solid evidence before they strike. And if they're fighting a terror organization, they're justified to strike the terror organization. The rule of law exists in this area. It's quite clear. But they must refrain if they have any dubious information that they've collected, as they have done in the past, and they admit it. They should not be striking. It's very clear. It is a legal responsibility of those who order. And these people don't have immunity. Now, the politicians may somehow hide behind immunity, but the officers of these military don't have immunity, and they need to be held accountable for their decision-making and killing of these children, women, elderly, men, who are actually working on the fields in Syria. that has been destroyed. Everybody's life has been destroyed by the reckless actions of these people that have no accountability. And that needs to stop immediately.
And lastly, do you think that the U.S. isn't holding anyone accountable of the deaths of these innocent people, as you mentioned, because they want to leave the door open to continue these operations without having anyone breathing down their backs?
It's not just, you see, it's not just the U.S. They have partners. For example, they're working with internationally prescribed terrorist organization, PKK. But they call them SDF to present them as if this is their local partner who actually gives them any information they like, and then they base their decisions on this false information or even maybe personal grudges and strike on the houses of people. And it's not just the SDF. There are other nations who are involved in intelligence gathering. Who creates the kill list for American drone pilots to strike? Who gives them the names, the locations, and information? It's not just America or some of the Army Delta forces on the ground. No, because the strikes are great in numbers. Who's making these lists and who's ordering these strikes? And America and their soldiers are actually probably thinking that nothing's going to happen because we're fighting terror. And then they just essentially strike these targets with immunity. And America is going to continue doing this unless we hold them accountable, and we intend to.
All right, Head of International Law at Stoke White, thank you so much, Hakan Camuz, for joining us here on the NewsHour.